Okay everybody, welcome to this video. It's going to be a quick video on the 5 channels of awareness, but I'm going to bridge some very simple leadership development teachings, right? And why this is like one of the amazing practices to pair together in order for someone to do trauma treatment. And I'm going to go into those different phases. This board looks kind of chaotic. It might seem like I'm all over the place, but stick around to the end of the video and I promise all of this will start to make sense, right? And this right here is like some of the core foundational stuff that I feel the education system gets to teach people on. I feel like it's what a lot of people, sorry, my cat was getting into stuff. It's also too what a lot of people get to be learning in therapy for effective healing works, and I feel like it's missing, right? So inside therapies, especially talk therapy, there's this method of what's called the top-down method, and this is like coming from the mind, talking down to the body. And what this perspective does here, we add a little elements of that, and we also do a bottom-up perspective, which is really what somatics, the language of the body, is all about, right? So we're going to get into this. We're going to talk a little bit more about how this looks. And like I said, it's going to look like I'm going to be all over the place, but just stick around to the end and you'll totally see how this makes sense, why this makes sense, and especially if you're working with entheogens, how the practice and understanding of somatics, the language of the body, why it's so important to know so you can see how psychedelics speak, because psychedelics, entheogens, speak somatics. Okay, so we're going to start actually at the bottom here, and you see right here is this master's wheel. My cats are going to be very excited about this, right? So you see this master's wheel, and up on the top left hand side, right where my cat's head is at, you see it's that you know that you know, right? And where you see this line go into like the little slice of right there, the little slice to the circle, it takes a slice of your awareness, things that you know, right? Things that you know, things that's in your present state aware. We call it your conscious awareness, right? Things that are in your conscious awareness. And then there's over here on the right hand side where it says you know that you don't know, which also takes a little pie of this circle. Right? So you know that you know that you don't know. These two pies are what we call current state awareness. It's also where up at the top you can see it has the sensations and the emotions right over here, and it has the feminine, it says unconscious areas, right? So those are the things that you don't know, right? That's in the you know that you don't know perspective. And it's also too why most people close off their emotions and close off what they're sensing in order to take residence or live in the mind, right? Where you see the mind and imagination channel. And then off to the left hand side of that, you see it says masculine conscious. So the masculine conscious channels is this current state of awareness right down over here, right? That's actually the imagination channel, that's the memory channel, and that's in the mind. This is where everybody lives. This is where people live. This is where people exist. This is where they operate from what we say the 4 survival strategies, the 4 defense strategies that ego will use in order to stay in a limited perspective, in order to remove infinite possibilities. And part of the journey is to start to be in the subconscious space, the posture. And as you start to learn about how to enter this posture space and bring the conscious awareness, illuminate the unconscious ones, and start to work through these 5 channels of awareness, you start to shift what's called your context. The context is everything that you are, the space that you are, in order for you to either A, have movement, or B, have stagnation, right? And then I'm gonna move up a little bit. But over here you see these looking good, seeking approval, being comfortable, playing it safe, being right, and then there's the being in control. Those are actually the 4 strategies that tend to get stuck in one or multiple of these channels, right? So this 5 channels of awareness is pretty much a self-inquiry practice to start moving that stagnant energy through the various channels. And like I said, most people live here in this area. 80% of the people, maybe 90% of the people live in this area. And especially when they're in overwhelm, they cut off the sensations, they cut off the emotions, right? They get out of presence, and then they go and live over in these areas, right? Which is where you make correlations, it's where you explain things, it's where you categorize stuff. It's the superpower of meaning making. It's where cohesive stories come, drawing logic, patterns, that's past experiences, and it sums up the equation of life. What does that mean? So that means everything in our meaning making around purpose and passion and peace and all that good stuff is where we make that. So why is this important, right? Trauma happens. First step is to regulate yourself, right? And this is actually right here what this phase 1 is about, right? So you can regulate yourself. And then how do you do that? Over here you have the co and self-regulation, or self and co-regulation. So like phase 1 of trauma treatment is all about regulating your nervous system, right? And that's what these 5 channels of awareness do. As you start to learn about these 5 channels of awareness, you can then both co-regulate, which means you could regulate your nervous system with somebody who knows about nervous system regulation, or you could like learn the self-regulation and what social engagements can support you with that. So that might even be as simple as breath work, being out in nature, having micro movements in the body, right? This is all what we call as phase 1 of trauma treatment. And then once we've gotten into a regulated state in our nervous system, maybe by asking some of the self-inquiry questions, moving through these channels of awareness, we then enter what's called phase 2 of trauma treatment. And phase 2, this is all about going into a red, what we call as a red, right? So phase 1 is all about going into a blue, regulating yourself. Now that you're regulated, right, and you figured out what those tools and ways of being are, right, that supports you, you then move into phase 2. The phase 2 is actually moving into these spaces where you look good or seek approval, where you're being comfortable or playing it safe, where you're being right about something, a radical position that creates opposition, and where you're being in control. If you could start to lean into, where does this live in the body? What emotions and sensations show up around these inside the body? You could start to address the unconscious behaviors, the unconscious commitments, and how the subconscious is wiring that, and then rewire this into conscious awareness. So I mentioned earlier, when we have any kind of heaviness, trauma, or something, we take resonance in this area. We live in the mind and imagination channel. We actually cut off this feminine flow. We cut off that yin version to ourselves. So we might even be like, oh, it's no good for me to take care of myself. Oh, it's no good to have a day off. Oh, I need to keep working and keep myself productive. Who am I if I'm not productive and creating these amazing results? That's all a trauma response from being cut off from the sensations and the emotions. So now, when you get cut off from these, the first thing that goes out the window is presence. So in trauma treatment, they call this, these strategies, the fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. So each one of these defense strategies can correlate to a fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, which is a phase 2. We call those the reds. And where do those reds live inside of these channels? Right? Where do those reds live inside of those channels? Basically, where is it that I can't be present? Where is it that I get distracted? Where is it that I have a fear? Where is it that a guilt shows up? And then once I start to access presence, I'm in the sensation channel. So if I can learn to open up this sensation channel that's blocked, I can start to learn how to get into presence. This means there's nothing for me to do. There's only the let, meaning only to be. And this is very challenging for people because down here at the bottom, you see these 2 red spots and then you see this green spot. So this becomes such a key element to manifestation, right, and to infinite possibilities, which I'll show how that fits down in this chart in a second. Right, so this is a have, do, be. If someone is a have, do, be, right, then they become a victim to their circumstances. They become a have, do, be victim to their emotions and the sensations, and then they cut this off, and then they go live over here, right? And then this is kind of like saying, if or when I have that $1 million, I then can do the things that I want in my life and then be happy and be peaceful. If or when I have that house that I really want, then I can do all the amazing things that brings this new house, and then I can be joyful, or I could be, right, whatever that might be for them. And this does not work. This creates a state of survival. It creates a state of what the shamans would say, a hungry ghost. It has you want more and more and more, more, better, different conversation, where you're always in resistance to what is, right? And then there's a saying in mastery that you can't have what you have, right? So this becomes a challenge for a lot of people, and this paradigm is where we're taught to live through society, right? I have to want, wish, 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 hope, 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 and then I can do what needs to happen to be how I feel I want to be. So this is Surrender, by the way. She's very excited about this presentation. So is Truth and Surrender. This is Truth. Very excited about this. So let's move into what we call as the controller. The controller is a do, have, be, right? So this is where somebody tells themselves that if I become a human doer, if I shift from human being and I become a human doer, then I can do, have, be. I can do all the things, I can do more, I can do everything that needs to happen in order for me to have peace, have joy, have the results that I'm looking for, and then I can be, magnificent, or I can be abundant or prosperous, or I can be, right, whatever those things are. And this controller method is saying, if or when I do, then I will have that 10 life in my space, and then I can be happy about what's going on. This too does not work, hence why they're in red. Being a human doer just creates drain, depletion, depression. In fact, what these two things right here have in common is that all of them have cut off this unconscious feminine sensation channels. No access to this right here. This is cut off too, meaning if you were to check in with your body and ask yourself how you felt, you probably have no idea, or you're probably numb in some kind of way and not aware of it, not aware of how to move through and past that frozenness, which also correlates to all of these right here, right? The defense strategies, the fight, the flight, the fawn, and the freeze, right? The 4 F's, the 4 reds that bring somebody into phase 2 of trauma treatment. So the idea is to come in here and then work your tools. But let's say like somebody gets overwhelmed, too overwhelmed, and they can't stay present. Everything is about the windows of presence, increasing the windows of presence. Let's say that this is too much. The goal then is to go back to phase 1. Go back to phase 1. You're like, okay, I'm regulated, I'm blue, my nervous system's blue. Blue just means I'm able to be with. I'm not overwhelmed, I'm able to be with. So you go to phase 1 and then pendulate back to phase 2. Meaning I titrate, I pendulate, just goes from one to the other, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But you do it in such a titrated manner, meaning that you open up these channels that have been stuck and stagnant for so long, very slowly, very gently, very slowly. And then if it gets too overwhelming, you just go back to phase 1 again, right? And this is where co-regulation and self-regulation becomes so key, because there's a saying, what's wired together fires together. So unless you rewire the nervous system, you're going to keep firing the same thoughts, the same ideas, the same behaviors, the same patterns are going to reveal themselves. But if you can understand this concept of pendulation and titration, going slowly into and then slowly out and then slowly into and going back and forth between phase 1 and phase 2, when you hit this enough, right? Meaning when you're with this enough, meaning when you're being present, and you're feeling to heal it, you then enter is what we call phase 3 of trauma treatment. Phase 3 is where all the miracles happen. It's where all the possibilities exist. It's where you'll find forgiveness. It's where you'll find the divine love. It's where compassion exists. It's where present exists. Presence is the key to it all. So it also means that when you have the excuse me, my voice is crackling. I had a very long lecture yesterday. Had like a 10-hour lecture yesterday. Excuse me. So when you get this phase of 1 and 2, when you understand this intimately, meaning that you know how to work this process, you enter phase 3. And as you enter phase 3, you start to actually leave what you know, what you know that you don't know, right? Current awareness. You start to leave current awareness. Truth agrees by this statement. And as you leave this, you then get to go into I know that I don't know that I don't know, which, as you can see here, is the realm of the unknown. It's the realm of experience. It's the realm of possibilities, and not just possibilities, infinite possibilities. This is where phase 3 activates this place right here that usually everybody is terrified of. Everybody is maybe they feel unworthy of, maybe they right, whatever their blockages might be. Any self-limiting belief actually stems from phase 1 and phase 2 and being stuck in this phase 2. It's like it comes into these channels in different ways, and then the stagnant energy creates some kind of correlation or explanation or story that is what we call self-limiting belief, right? And if we do that, what happens is in the emotional channel, when we cut it off, we have what's called this maintenance cycle of homeostasis. I don't know if you've ever heard of homeostasis before, but this right here, this upper limits, starts to really speak into that, right? So the maintenance cycle of homeostasis, think of it like a thermostat, and that your emotions are wired or set to a very specific thermostat. But let's say like you have this experience that goes past or outside of your homeostasis. Like if you set the thermostat to, let's say, like 70, you know, your joy is like hitting like an 80, right? So then you actually start to break through that homeostasis ceiling. This is where all the rewiring starts to happen. But then what's interesting, because what's wired together fires together, there's this upper limit problem that starts to show up, where there's this maybe like this sabotaging energy of that high vibe, right? So if you're at an 80 in joy, an 80 in peace, but you're wired to be a 70, ego will do very interesting things, right? You might get sick, you might get injured, you might pick a fight with yourself or you know, maybe a partner or a friend or something, or you might just fucking be upset for no reason. You might just have like anxiety, and you might be like, I don't really know what's going on here, you know. And this is all in the emotional channel that also is correlated to the sensational channel. So emotions can be past, present, or future depending on what type of emotion we're dealing with. But if you pair it with the sensation channels, you always bridge this emotional channel that's either past, present, or future. If it's in the past or the future, you can then bridge it into the present. And what we're doing with these strategies here, right? The looking good, seeking approval, being comfortable, playing it safe, being right, and being in control. We also say these are the fight, flight, fawns, and freeze, the 4 F's. This is all the red zones. So what we're doing with the red is we're taking the past, we're throwing it into the future, and then we actually fuck up our presence. So like we just see this looping, this like trauma loop, which I have another thing I'll show in another video around the trauma loop, because it's an amazing thing that also speaks about the same exact thing that I'm sharing here. Right, but then if we can't get present, we can't increase our window of tolerance, the windows of presence, then we start to loop, and then it actually becomes challenging to invite ease, joy, and grace into our lives. Right? Today I invite ease, joy, and grace. It's all in your face, right? So it's like, how do I bring that into my face? These are a lot of those steps right here. This board right here, it's probably been one of the biggest life-changing teachings for me, for my clients, for my family. And as you can see here, I have like a monthly debrief, but I do a daily debrief myself, right? So I had complex PTSD, debilitating depression, suicidal ideations, you name it, I've dealt with it, right? So now let me come up a little bit. This daily briefing, I'm always looking into my ways of being. What's working, what's not working, what can I add? Always in my ways of being. Like, who am I being in order to create these things in my space? Who am I being that's not connected or communicating or in intimacy? And I gauge this from 1 to 10. 1 to 10. I also add honesty there too. Because I'm always like, how honest am I being with my sensations? How honest am I being with my emotions? Maybe that I create some kind of self-limiting belief where I can't be honest, and there's this stuck energy somewhere in my body, somewhere in my sensations, right? So then, this, we already mentioned that this is victim to circumstances. This is victim to our emotions that get stuck in our homeostasis, the upper limits, right? And they show up in these very ways. We've already talked about how this is just being a doer, a human doer, and we get to be a human being, right? If we could see that I'm a human being, if I be, do, have, I become the creator. So it says, if or when I be. So if or when I be that person that I need to be, the context in which I am, I can then do this. Doing this just happens. I don't even have to think about it. It just happens for me to have those results that I'm looking for within myself or even outside of myself. So I'll give you an example of this. Pretty much this is the keys to manifestation, is the human being in which I am, the context in which I visualize, then dictates my doing this. So if I set my intention right here to be a peaceful being, to be a happy, joyful, easeful, joyful, and graceful being, right, then what will my doing this, how would that actually pair with it, right? And when we're a human doer, for example, we focus 90% on mechanism. 90% on the mechanism, meaning like, how am I going to do this? Or where's the evidence to prove that I can do this? Or who's going to give me authority to do this? But when we're a human being, we're focused 90% on intention, because our intention creates our reality, right? Our thoughts and ideas, our feelings don't leave their source. So if we see the source of where we're becoming from and where we're being, then the mechanism we focused on 10%, 90% on intention, 10% on mechanism. Some people even say 99% on intention and beingness, and then 1% on mechanism. And I tend to agree with this, because sometimes you don't need to know how it's going to look. Sometimes you don't need the evidence, and sometimes it doesn't matter who gives you the authority. Like, you might have to claim authority within yourself in order for you to have what you want and create what you're doing. And I share with you, I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So like, my wife and I were developing a mystery school through our church, entheogenic church, and also between our LLC, Shamanic Ananda. And a lot of these teachings we're sharing both from, this is like more of a mental space, emotional space, and then body space, which I didn't go over this part yet, but it talks about how right here, the posture channel is all about the body, right? So this is like the tone of the voice, this is your facial and hand gestures, this is secretion, so it's like anything that's purging out of you, and then the trembles and shakes, which is also like a way of purge. So like, when you, let's say like you're doing these trauma treatments, right, and you're going from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 1 to phase 2, and you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, your body will have these reactions, right? It'll have these secretions. You could like physically purge, or you might like yawn or cry or laugh or sweat, or right, the trembles, you might shake, like you might have all these things that start to show up, similar to I give the analogy when a cheetah is chasing a gazelle, right? When a cheetah chases a gazelle, and let's say like, the gazelle needs to produce all of this fear inside of its body in order to get away, right? It needs to create all this adrenaline, all this cortisol in order for it to escape and survive. And then once it does, once it gets into a safe space, right, which is what this whole 5 channels of awareness is about, creating a safe space within yourself. And that's what this is too about, is about creating a safe space inside the mind. If you create a safe space inside the mind and then inside the body, you then will have these tremors and shakes. Those self-limiting beliefs will come up and out of the nervous system. And then it's just about, do I need to do this with myself, or do I need to do this with somebody who knows about nervous system regulation? And then come from phase 1 to phase 2, from phase 1 to phase 2. And then phase 3 will activate. You'll make new stories, new meanings, new things where you could totally have ease, joy, and grace all in your face. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this quick little workshop, quick little board. This has been really helpful, like I said, for me, for my clients. This is a very, very quick introduction to this work. This work, I mean, I've been spending a couple of years on this now, and I see some of my clients also working on this one thing for a couple of years, especially working with entheogens. Once you get this stuff down inside the yin version, the yin version is, like I said, the feminine unconscious way of being with things gently, slowly, like a turtle, moving very, very turtle-like. Then you can start to yang it, or yang, being the masculine conscious yang version, where it's more rapid and you can move quicker. So it's like move slower in order to move quicker. And when you understand the 5 channels of awareness, the language of the body, the somatics, the somas, right? The somas, the body, you then can actually see, when you take an entheogen, what and how things are coming up and through you. And that's where the yang starts to come in. You just start to move through this process faster, quicker, stronger, smarter, right? And then, like, if there's a fear or something that pops up, you could tune into your body, see where this is living, see how this is operating, and then by honoring that protector's like, oh my gosh, they're listening to me, oh my gosh, they see me, and then they just start to reveal all this wisdom and information, which I highly recommend checking out this book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. But there's tons of books that talk about this stuff, and the books are just one layer, one element. This workshop is just one layer, one element. It's the actual practice, the direct experience that people need to do, right? It's the homework assignments that you get assigned. It's the being in a co-regulated state when maybe you don't really want to show up. It's being in a self-regulated state when maybe you don't really want to show up, right? It's about being in the realm of the unknown, learning how to be uncomfortable with, or how to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness, how to be comfortable with the discomfort. It's all about getting out of your comfort zone, shifting the comfort zone, and always realizing that comfort is not my friend. Comfort comes to us as a guest, it remains to imprison us as a host, and it stays forever to fuck up our lives. So if we realize that the comfort zone is not our friend, if we realize how to work these 5 channels of awareness through simple things like self-inquiry, which just means questions. You just ask yourself questions to get into these channels of awareness. You see what's active, what's inactive, and then how do I start to open up these channels that have been shut down like a lever. And then there you go, rewiring's happening. There's no such thing as a small rewire versus a big rewire. All rewires are amazing rewires. If you do need support with this, if you're looking for guidance around this, feel free to reach out. We're here for you. And I hope you really enjoyed this workshop, this little video.